That's a lot. We started with the pilot project with only 40 people. Now we're in several hundred. We have several hundred members. We have service in over 100 buildings here in Hong Kong. One interesting fact about recycling that most people don't actually see is that when you actually properly recycle, you will probably end up reducing the amount of garbage you have by at least 50%. For me personally, I have reduced my garbage by 75%. That's huge. So what's going on? Oh, by the way, these are some of the people we work with. So we work with a lot of big companies to help them with their recycling. Here's our contact information. So now we've gone through a presentation. Let's just have a more informal conversation about what HK Recycles is. So,
all right. So I mean, Brian pretty much gave you the overview there, but let me just, with a quick show of hands, I mean, how many of you have recycling at their homes? I mean, do most of you recycle on a daily basis already, as it is? All right, so not that many of you, apparently, which is the same experience me and Brian have. I'm from Toronto, Brian's from New York. So we come from, since we were born, basically, we were taught how to recycle. Like, you shouldn't throw these things in the garbage. But you come to Hong Kong and, well, you see the government bins out there, right? So the government bins, they take plastic, they take metal, and they take paper. And the biggest form of recycling in Hong Kong is just people bringing newspapers, basically, to the local recycle depots. But by and large, most of those bins that we found out as we were doing this was a lot of that actually just ends up with the landfill anyway, because the infrastructure in Hong Kong is just not at a level where they can handle mixed recyclables. And I mean, with recent events, most of Hong Kong's plastic used to just be exported to China. So that ended at the beginning of this year. So right now, Hong Kong basically just doesn't have the facilities to actually recycle plastic. So it just gives you something to think about whenever, even when you're using the government recycling bins, a lot of that doesn't get recycled. So we were looking for a way to actually increase that recycling rate from 14% to something much more acceptable, especially since the landfill is going to be filled in 5 to 6 years. So what we do is we serve both residential and corporate customers. So for residential, that was the first thing we focused on. So some people have bins in their buildings that they can use, but a lot of people were realizing that even when they threw stuff in those bins, it would get thrown out. So we designed, those are our custom designed bags, because Hong Kong, you don't have much space either. You can't use the big recycling bins that we're used to in North America. So we designed bags that are reusable, that we give to each customer free of charge, and that helps with the separation process. Another thing that stands out with us is that we take glass. So as Brian mentioned before, glass, only about 3% in Hong Kong is recycled, which is incredible because it takes up the most space in the landfill and it's not biodegradable. So we work, the thing is though that the government has set up some infrastructure. There are other enterprises in Hong Kong sponsored by the Hong Kong government that take glass and transform it into other things, including bricks. But there's just a disconnect between people using glass in their homes, or bars using it in their restaurants, or corporations using glass in their working environment, and getting that glass and getting those recyclables to the depots. So where we come in is we're the middleman here. We're basically a logistics company in that we take the recyclables from people who are actually using them and bring them to the final recycler. We don't actually have our own recycling facilities or anything like that. But we just help bridge the gap between them, and we do it by charging a small fee. So for our residential customers, we charge $25 a week, and because of that, we've been able to set up as a private business. So we've got no government support on this. We've been able to just bootstrap this from day one. So we're quite happy with how things have gone, and I mean, we are a social enterprise, and we had a very social focus when we began, but we're also a business, as Brian said. So we would not have gone into this unless we saw the potential to make it sustainable from a financial perspective.
So one of the things that I want to start off with, we started talking about like enterprises. Hanley gave a really good story about how he kind of got the idea and started. One of the things you guys might find interesting is just how he kind of got started with the whole thing. And so that's probably one of the most interesting parts about this social business was before we even started, I would just, Mike and I are friends. So we've been friends for several years. And so one day last year, I just said, hey, do you want to do some recycling? Like, do you want to get into recycling? And he's like, all right, that's kind of a weird thing. But so I started doing some research. And before we even launched it, before we even went to market or anything like that, before building out a business plan, we had an idea, but we actually, so one of the good things that we talked about was testing. And so one of the things we did was we just kind of sent a feeler out to market and said, how will people react? So before launching, we actually created a survey. We got about 100 to 200 responses to the survey. Very simple thing. Do you recycle? Yes or no? And from there, it was like all sorts of questions. Now, what we found was half of the people said yes, half of the people said no. Of the people that said yes, we asked them, is it inconvenient to recycle? And pretty much everyone said yes. And so the other question we asked was, would you actually pay to have someone come and pick up your recyclables? Now, here's the interesting part. Most of them actually said yes. They recycle now, but they would actually pay to have someone collect the recyclables, which is the logistics part. And so like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So then we looked at the people who said no, and we asked them, why don't you recycle? Is it that you don't care, or is it that it's too inconvenient? 50% of people, of the people who said no, said, I just don't care. But the rest of the 50% of people said, it's just too inconvenient. And so to go back to the point of like, why we're here, it's about the systems. The key message that we got was that the system was too inconvenient to recycle. So that's a huge thing to say. Hong Kong is for a city that prides itself on convenience, with public transportation, with basically stores in every single corner, to be in a city that says we have no waste management system that is convenient and efficient on a recycling front, that's really surprising. So we said, okay, well, why don't we make it more convenient? And if we make it more convenient, why don't we ask you, would you be willing to pay? And so from there, of these couple hundred people that responded, we had about half the people said, yeah, I'll pay. And the price ranges were crazy. We're like, oh, would you pay $5? People said yes. Would you pay $20? Yes. Would you pay $50? Yes. Would you pay $100 a week to have someone come and collect your recyclables? Some people said yes. And we're like, all right, we got a business going here. So we actually had something going. And so we knew there was a market. So that we had an idea. We knew there was a market. And so now Mike and I decided to go and actually start building out the idea. We started building out the logistics framework. We started building out the website. We started building out a way for people to sign up. The whole entire thing, all is based on convenience.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think we wanted to emphasize was just we were a very lean operation. We've been around for about a year, and in terms of startup costs, startup capital, we've put about 50 grand Hong Kong into this to run everything. So because of that, we have no office, everything's run online, customer service is through email there's so many tools online that we use. MailChimp for email marketing, just Google Apps for our email, and just Google Drive. Basically there's so many free tools out there that we just use so that we can reduce our costs. And then, me and him both had full-time jobs at the time as well. So this was more of a part.
Full-time job. He's a banker right now.
Yeah. So I kind of balanced this out. My shins. But anyway, going from that, it basically, we just kind of went with it, and then it kind of grew, and then we focused more on, say, viral marketing or social marketing rather than more traditional paid marketing, just to keep costs light. And so we've grown from there right now. And another aspect was the social aspect. So a lot of people at first were asking us, are you a charity? Do I get tax refunds from using your service? No, we're set up as a private corporation, but we have a social focus. So one of that was to hire people from marginalized backgrounds. So what does that mean? So our first employee was an ex-con. I met him in a park at 11 o'clock at night in some type to interview the guy. We hired him the next day, and he helped us for about 2 weeks. He brought in another ex-con friend, so now we had a crew going. We called up a van driver, and then we got that going. We've also reached out to charities. Right now, our main worker is a young man from Caritas who has autism. I mean, he's a great guy. He works very hard, and we've trained others with autism as well. We've also worked with another charity, Inner City Ministries, in Hong Kong, which works with the Nepalese community. We tried out, originally we were actually trying to hire single mothers who we thought, I mean, they're at home, but when their kids are at school, they're not doing anything. Maybe they want to earn some supplemental income. So we gave that a shot as well. So I mean, we had a business plan at the beginning. We had projections. We had grand schemes. But you know, as we went along, things changed. You know, the ex-cons didn't work out as well. The single mothers didn't work out as well. But then the autistic guys were great. So I mean, we've learned a lot on the way, but our point is with this is that we've stayed lean so that we could make mistakes. Nothing was fatal. If we trained a guy for a month and he turned out to be terrible, it wasn't too bad. We just found another guy to replace him. And by doing so, with our business model, we've also been able to pay above market wages. So minimum wage in Hong Kong is about 30 Hong Kong. We pay about 40, and we give them lunch and we give them full vacations and everything. So our focus is very much on the people as a business, but it also makes good business sense because our employee turnover rates are also much lower compared to other types of businesses. And in terms of our customers are a lot more understanding when they realize that our employees are from marginalized backgrounds.
So, I mean, one of the cool things that, one of the driving points that we want to make is that, when you talk about systems, and you talk about mistakes, when you talk about starting a business, I mean, Mike is a banker, I'm a marketing guy. We had no idea. We don't know anything about basic. We don't know anything about logistics. We didn't know anything about garbage. You know, we just didn't know. But one of the things is that we didn't even know how to start a business. This is our first business that we actually truly started together. And so one of the things that's important, especially for young or older potential entrepreneurs, is challenge an existing system, challenge it. There's so much opportunity to make things more efficient. You know, like the examples that were put together before, with the carpets and all that stuff. There's an opportunity there. You just have to challenge it and see if there is an opportunity. If there is, go for it. You might not know what you're doing, but if you just try, you'll fail. You make mistakes, but that's great. Because you end up doing it better the next time. And so we've been doing this for a year, and so now we're growing. It's like, so one of the things is we actually signed on with another group called So Asia, and they've been a partner to us. They're saying, hey, we want to help you guys grow this business into something much bigger than you really are. And so the sky's the limit. So just challenge, keep thinking creatively, but just keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of our future outlook, I mean, basically, the 14% recycling rate, that's not sustainable. There's no reason that Hong Kong, one of the most modern societies in the world, should be like a third world country when it comes to recycling. So it has to change. We're running out of landfill space, and you can see the government starting to make more and more noise about changing. So from our perspective, we're there as someone who's practically available to help with that recycling issue. We're moving from residential, like individual units, to full buildings. And we're eminently scalable in that regard because basically our clientele is anyone who's generating waste, which is basically everybody. So from there, I mean, like Brian said, the sky's the limit. We're looking at serving more and more people and expanding to new recycling types as well, but right now we've got our hands full as it is with just Hong Kong Island, which is where we're focused, and with the 4 main recyclables of plastic, paper, metal, and glass.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're going to be kicking off for the next couple months is we have this thing called Ambassador Program. Basically, it encourages people to get involved in their own buildings and say, hey, I want my apartment building to sign up for recycling. help us post a poster in your in your elevator or your common place, so that way you can get not just you, but maybe you and like 10 other friends or your neighbors to sign up, so we can scale upwards. And together, we will actually be able to recycle more. We'll actually be able to do a lot more good for our company. Anyway, this is our contact information in case you want to find out more about us. Our website is hkrecycles.com, and shoot us an email, hang out with us, and do you have any questions?
Actually, yeah, I have a quick question. In China we have really high recycling rates across the board in pretty much every category of recyclable you can think of. But that's because there's an industry to vacuum this stuff up, put it into use. Is that the problem for Hong Kong, that there's nowhere for this stuff to go in an industry where they would use it?
So, I mean, it's multi-level, the answer is. So Taiwan's the same thing. Taiwan, the New York Times article came out recently that's saying Taiwan's recycling industry is going to start booming like crazy. Their recycling rates have skyrocketed in the last like 10, 15 years. We went from something like 5% down to 56% or something like that. And the thing is that they're actually finding ways to reuse the recyclable material. To your point, why isn't there more recycling in Hong Kong? One of the reasons is actually, one of the reasons I believe is actually because of cost centers. Now, a lot of people don't really think about this, but so landfill is going to be filled up in about 5 or 6 years, right? So one of the proposals was, let's create a new landfill. Well, the reality is, if you create a new landfill, it's going to cost you about $3 billion. To operate the landfills is $400 million. Let's extend that over 10 years. You're looking at about $7 to $8 billion of cost. That's just for the landfill, maintenance. That will eventually get filled up anyway. So that's $8 billion that you're spending. That's $8 billion of money that the taxpayers are going to be paying. That's what people don't really think about. It's like, oh, garbage is free. Me throwing away my garbage, that's free. Well, it's really not free. It's actually going to go into your taxes. That's not the only thing. For a place like Hong Kong that has no land, to create a new landfill and take up land space, think about the housing estates that you could have, the commercial, whatever, the parks. So many things could have been used for that land in a place that has no land. So that's a huge thing to think about. So that's billions of dollars, wasted. And so why Hong Kong hasn't recycled is because no one has actually felt the pain. No one's actually said, the government's never said, hey, you actually have to start charging for this stuff. Other governments, there are actually a lot of tax breaks, a lot of subsidies that go into recycling and proper waste management. The thing with China is that, I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but policy came out with plastic, the green fence, like saying, oh, we don't want your plastic anymore. It's actually, China they're not saying they don't want your plastic, they're just saying we don't want your garbage. And so one of the